Find a stone and lay my head down. I was born with only one way to go. Life of the drifter's all I know. So home I came on steel and steam, living my life street to street. You open my eyes, now I'll be your man. Drop the chains of freedom with a weathered end. I'll be your warrior. Live strength in my hand. Command me as I defend this broken land. I'll be your warrior. Your fight is now mine. Walk with me. These scars I bear, I want for you. How far I bled, I saw it through. I never asked for a thing in return. You say the word, this world will burn. I'll be your warrior. Live strength to my hand. Command me as I defend this broken land. I'll be your warrior. Your fight is now mine. Walk with me. I'll be your warrior. Live strength to my hand. Command me as I defend this broken land. I'll be your warrior. Your fight is now mine. Walk with me. Nowhere to turn, no place to hide this time. No words to sing, no prayer, no verse and no rhyme. Nowhere to turn, man, I haven't left behind. I wanna be alone, a place no one can find. Everywhere I look, I see shadows stare back at me. I know I'm never gonna be the same. Never gonna be the same. Nowhere to feel the battles that I won. Nowhere to kneel, repent the sins that I've done. Nowhere to sin, the ghost that lives in my mind. I leave behind a restless mind. I pay the price, nothing's free. The path ahead with memory flare. Eyes are open, but I can't see. At a time, I can't leave a trace. Don't recognize my own eyes on my face. Nowhere to turn, I can't breathe in this place. Nowhere to run, I can't lose this race. I see shadows stare back at me, and I know never gonna be the same. Never gonna be the same. Everywhere I see shadows stare back at me, and I know I'm never gonna be the same. Never gonna be the same.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fights, all the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming. Young rockets trembling, the bomb bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land another praise? You're the home of the brave. Turn me on the
we are the brave. We'll fight you in name, the name of the brave. We are the U.S. of A. For those unaware, that flag is still there. It's our future to save, land of the brave, the U.S. of A. Oh, say, just that star-spangled banner can't wave for the land of the brave. And the
The trail of the 3rd Army and the 19th Tactical Air Command of the 8th Air Force is marked by more than 40,000 white crosses, 40,000 dead Americans.
We were young and soldiers called to dedicate our lives in the name of God and country. Do what's just for us, go do what's right. A hot band of brothers waiting on our chance to add one more page unto the victory dance. Here am I, Lord, send me, send me. Victory lies in the spirit of the lives of the men who died for me.
Then I heard the voice of the Lord saying, whom shall I send? And who will go for us? And I said, here am I. Send me.
Oh, send me.
This is Michael Broderick, Marine Corps veteran, actor, and Gallant Few board member. You are listening to The New American Veteran on Vets On Media. Now here's Carl Monger.
And hey, good afternoon. Today is February 24th, 2015. Welcome to The New American Veteran. TNAV is a broadcast of Gallant Few Inc., a 501c3 nonprofit. And our mission is to prevent veteran isolation by connecting new veterans with hometown veteran mentors, thereby facilitating a peaceful and successful transition from military service to a civilian life filled with hope and purpose. Our goal is to connect every new veteran with a hometown veteran mentor, and we do this by creating and supporting a nationwide network of successfully transitioned veterans that engage locally with new veterans with the same military background, now themselves going through transition. We believe this will prevent veteran unemployment, homelessness, and suicide. I hope you enjoyed the music at the start of the show today. I've used these guys quite a bit recently, and I'll start varying it a little bit, but I like it so much. There's a group out there that's a bunch of veterans called Iron Glide. Warrior was the first tune that I played. Then Nowhere by the Jim O'Farrell Band. Nowhere is a song about PTSD. And then the Star Spangled Banner by Madison Rising. All outstanding organizations, all outstanding musical bands, and they're all veterans. I think some of the bands have non-veterans on them, but they're all headed up or fronted by veterans, and that's pretty cool. So appreciate you looking them up and supporting them. Today's show is it's got a personal dedication to me, and every time I do a dedication, it's always personal to a certain extent, but this one really is extra personal because I got a note from my mom night before last. She actually texted me, which is pretty cool. We text back and forth occasionally. But this was one of those things that I'm sure she didn't know how to tell me in a phone call. And she said that her cousin, which is my my grandmother's sister's son. He, veteran of the Korean War, where he served in an armored unit. I don't remember what the armored unit is. I think I only actually met Junior, is what they called him. I think I only actually met Junior one time in my life, and he, sometime over the last week or so, he took his own life. And I knew from talking to family members that he had a horrific experience during the Korean War, where he was in an armored convoy that came under attack, and he passed out or was knocked unconscious during the attack. And when he woke up, he was the only one left alive. And to carry that with you, to survive all that, and to carry that with you, I regret that I wasn't able to connect with him and get to know him. But Emmett Whitaker Jr. is his name, and he also now has become one of the statistics at 22 a day. The last time that I read a report from the VA about this, they said that more than half of the veteran suicides are over the age of 50. He certainly was over the age of 50. But when you think about having gone through everything that he went through, and then everything that he went through in his life subsequent to that, to get to the point where he took his own life, I don't know all the details to it, but it's a darn shame either way. So, cousin Emmett Whitaker Jr., may you rest in peace, and I hope that you have linked up with your comrades on the high ground, and that it was a joyous reunion when you entered that assembly area. The Spartan pledge coins are finally in, and I already have about maybe a dozen pre-orders on these. I've got 50 sets that just came in. If we go through them all, I'll order some more. They come in a pair of two. They come in a pair. That's two to a pair. So yeah, there's two. I'm no good at math. But the back side of this has the Spartan Pledge, and the Spartan Pledge basically says, I promise not to take my own life by my own hand until I talk to my battle buddy first, and I'll make it my mission to find a mission to help my warfighter family. It is an incredible message of outreach and one of personal connection. I know of veterans. I have had men walk up to me at events in other states and say, you saved my buddy's life. And the one I'm thinking about in particular is a Ranger veteran and a Vietnam Ranger veteran. And I said, how in the world did I do that? And he said, the Spartan Pledge. He said, as soon as I heard about that, I knew that one of my brothers was hurting a little bit, so I reached out to him and I said, hey, I want you to look this up. Watch the video, descendantsofsparta.com. Watch the video, hear this guy talking about the Spartan Pledge, and then I want you to take that with me. And the guy took it with him. And every week they've been communicating now, and the guy is doing a lot better. What is so important about the Spartan Pledge is when you get to a place where you're really seriously contemplating ending your own life, you've gotten to a point where you are so isolated and you think that the pain that you are in is so great that there's only one way out of it, and that's by killing yourself. And when you take the step of reaching out to let your buddy know that you're going to do it, you've opened up a line of communication, and there's the opportunity there for you to be reminded why you're loved, why you're important, why you're respected. Because those that I have spoken with that have attempted suicide, they have gotten to that point because they believe, number one, the pain can't get any worse and it will only be better by ending their life. And number two, nobody gives a crap about them anymore. Number three, the best thing that they ever did in their life is now in their rearview mirror, and they will never, ever again be a part of something as important as they were a couple of years ago when they were in the service. This gives an opportunity to remind them of why they are important. And there's one more story I want to tell real quick before I keep moving on here. And this was about at the very beginning of Gallant Few. This is probably 4 years ago, because we're 5 years old now this month. And I had a veteran that had reached out to me and had actually been sitting in his vehicle, and he was emotionally distraught when he called me. It was late at night, and he told me, I don't need to go on, I don't need to live, I don't want to put up with this pain anymore. Got him through that and got him to go into a hospital where they watched him over the weekend. And during that weekend, I started looking in the area for another veteran that could connect with him, a veteran from the same branch of the service, having the same MOS, maybe the same units, and that's exactly what I found. I found a veteran that had served in the exact same battalion, only spread apart by maybe 20 years. And that veteran was now a family practice doctor in a neighboring community. So I explained the situation, told him about the guy. I said, would you be willing to connect with him? And the guy said, absolutely, I will. He said, and I got to tell you, first he just said, I will, and then he contacted him. He called me up the next day, and he said, I got to tell you a little bit more about where I was in life and how important it was that you called me. And he went on to tell me that about 5 or 6 years before, he had sat in an apartment with all the lights turned off, and he had drunk the majority of a fifth of Jack Daniels, and he had a 45 locked and loaded sitting on his lap, and he was just trying to get up the courage to put it in his mouth and blow his brains out. And he didn't do it. And he came through that. And he said, here I am now. It's half a dozen years later. I'm a family practice physician. I've got a good life. I have a good income. I am making a difference in the lives of hundreds of people. And he said, I just about gave that all away because I was at a point where I thought it would never, ever get any better and I would never be important to anybody again. That's only 6 years later. That turned around for him. When you are at that point where you feel like there's nothing left and you want to end your life, you got to remember that it will get better. You can take control of your life. Organizations like Gallup can help you take control of your life and develop a plan so that you can move forward. Boone Cutler, the author of the Spartan Pledge, often says a warfighter without a mission is a dead warfighter. If you don't have a mission, you don't have a purpose. If you don't have a purpose, it's pretty much all over. All you're doing is just breathing, eating, and crapping. And that ain't good enough for us. You've got it in you to turn all of that around. So if you're out there, you hear this, you need some help, gallantfew.org. Look at the top right-hand corner. You'll see my mobile phone number and a way to email me right there if you want to reach out to me. We'll get you in touch with somebody. We'll help you put together a plan. We'll help you take back control of your life. And we'll help you not be one of those 22 statistics. Watch soon. I'm going to have information up on the website and on the Facebook page and the blog about how to get these. $20 a set plus shipping, and I don't know if I finished the thought on this. They come in numbered pairs of 2, and if you can read that number on the end of there, they come in pairs, numbered pairs of 2, and your buddy gets one and you get one, and you keep it with you all the time. It's awful heavy to hang around your neck, but I had a guy that had one of these that put it on a chain around his neck, and every time he moved and it thumped into his chest, it reminded him of the pledge, the importance of the pledge, and the fact that he had taken that pledge, and it got him through a very rough time. 3 other announcements that I want to make, and then we'll move into bringing our guest on the show. The first one is Run Ranger Run. We're in the final week of Run Ranger Run. The website's runrangerrun.com. Run Ranger Run started when Corey Smith, 3 years ago, decided to embark on an epic journey of 565 miles by himself. He was going to run 20 miles a day until he got from Fort Benning, Georgia to Indianapolis. And he was doing it to illustrate, to personify the difficult journey that a soldier has becoming a civilian. He got a stress fracture partway through, so he ran first, then he walked, then we got him a bike, and then he biked the rest of the way in, and then he ran about the last mile when he got to Indianapolis. Phenomenal accomplishment. He covered all 565 miles in that 1 month. A lot of people paid attention to him while he did that. That message got out to a lot of folks. So we took that message, we took the base of people that were following what he did, and we turned it into an annual event where we asked people to come together in teams of 10 and do a combined total, walking, biking, running, treadmill, stationary bike, stair climber, whatever you can do, swimming that covers distance. Come together in teams of 10 and commit to a combined total of 565 miles. I think my team's getting close on the 565 if we haven't got there yet. But we've got an ultra marathoner, which is really handy to have on your team when you're doing an event like this. We've got old Mr. Hip Replacement me that has been able to log. I think I'm coming in on close to 45 miles. I got a little bit to do to get to my share of the 56, which is times 10 is 565 miles, but we're going to get there. And as we share this message, we get folks that believe, that hear what we do, they believe in what we do, and they want to support us financially. So this has become the #1 awareness event for Gallon Few, and it's become the #1 fundraising event for Gallon Few. We have tremendous things that are in the works right now. When Gallon Few started, shoot, up to 3 years ago, there were no employees. Then there was one. Now there are two. There are another 2.5 that are contracted employees that are working, 2 of them on a full-time basis. We're going to expand more into this year, depending on how well Run Ranger Run does. That's going to enable us to have the capacity to help more and more veterans. We have, a year ago, rolled out the Raider Project, which is the second thing I wanted to mention, that has a focus on Marine Special Operations, Raiders, and combat Marines. We have networked hundreds and hundreds of combat veteran Marines over the last year, and we have saved lives. We have taken guys that have been living in their car, and we've put a roof over their head. We have been able to engage and locate resources and connect them to resources that, without Run Ranger Run providing us the ability to focus our time on that, we would not have been able to do that. There are lives. There are men that are alive today because of Run Ranger Run, because of what Corey Smith did, and because of you out there that have supported this effort. We're still only scratching the surface. We can't prevent 22 suicides a day. We can't stop 22 suicides a day, but we can stop the next one. And then we can stop the next one. And if we can put something in place that is, as we do, one-on-one mentoring, hometown, in a challenging personal relationship, then we can start knocking off the next suicide. And when we knock off that next suicide, pretty soon we're going to make a dent in the 22. The Darby Project is a focused effort on U.S. Army Ranger veterans. Watch for an announcement the first week of March, because that's getting ready to blow the doors off of what we're doing as well. Not too long after that, we have the Fathom Project, which is a U.S. Navy mentoring program, and we also have, we wanted to call it the Wingman Project, but the Air Force National Guard already took that. So we're working on exactly what it's going to be called, but it's based on one-on-one mentoring by U.S. Air Force veterans for U.S. Air Force veterans. So watch that. Get plugged in. Help us to grow this program. GallonFew.org, RunRangerRun.com. All right. I have been gabbing on long enough. Let me switch over my screens here so that I can get my guest to come on the line. And I see he's been patiently waiting by, and I appreciate that. Today I'm pleased to welcome author Michael Haskew. Michael is a historian. He's been writing and researching military history subjects for over 20 years. He's the editor of World War II History magazine, which I believe I subscribe to, by the way, and the World War II Desk Reference with the Eisenhower Center for American Studies. And he is recently, or in the process right now, of releasing this book, which is West Point, 1915. Michael, are you there?
I'm here. Thank you so much for having me, Carl.
Hey, Michael, it's an honor to talk to you. I got a chance to read a little bit out of this book here over the last couple of days, and I got to tell you, it is fascinating stuff.
Well, thank you so much. It was a great journey of about 3.5 years of research and digging around in archives and things of that nature to put it together, and I really enjoyed the process, and we've had a good response so far. I think it's a great story to tell, and one that 100 years later should be told.
Okay, so the title of the book, West Point, 1915, Eisenhower, Bradley, and the Class the Stars Fell On. For those out there who may not be history buffs, what does that mean, the Class the Stars Fell On?
Well, the Class the Stars Fell On is a term that was applied to this group of men that graduated from West Point from the U.S. Military Academy in June of 1915. There were 164 graduates, Carl, that finished the 4 years of rigorous studies there at West Point. And of that 164, 59 actually achieved the rank of brigadier general or higher during their career. And that's 36% of that number. And when you consider that in the beginning, back in 1911, when they started, there were 287 young men in this class with an attrition rate of 40% or better, that many actually graduated. And of that number of 164, 59 became brigadier general or higher. So it was dubbed the Class the Stars Fell On, kind of as a moniker, just to illustrate the collective achievement of that group of young men.
Well, and it was also a class that found itself, I'm sure unknowingly at the time, but positioned to gain initial combat experience in World War I and then be in incredibly influential positions in World War II. When you think about one group of military leaders that has brand new second lieutenants coming out in 1915 into the Army, the things that were about to unfold onto them, what a collection of individuals.
Well, that's absolutely right. When you consider the way the world looked at the time, when they graduated, as you know, Europe was in the midst of World War I, which was the most costly and horrific conflict up to that time. This group of men happened to be graduating at a time that was so significant in world history that we may never see the like of it again. And you're absolutely right. They were positioned to do some great things. Several of them started out with General Pershing when they chased Pancho Villa into Mexico in 1916. Then they did have experience during World War I, actually into World War II, the Korean War, into the Vietnam era, and the Cold War. So the breadth of their experience is incredible when it's considered against the backdrop of history.
What a difference in military leadership. When I was in ROTC, the ROTC fraternity was Pershing Rifles. And so we got to learn a little bit about Blackjack Pershing through that process. And I remember, and this really stuck with me, that at the end of World War I, because he commanded the American Expeditionary Forces, he only wore one ribbon on his uniform, and that was the World War I Victory Medal. And I thought, I mean, you don't see that anymore. What could you imagine a modern-day leader, General Petraeus or McChrystal, only wearing their Afghanistan campaign ribbon? I mean, that's almost mind-blowing that you would have somebody that would be that much of a humble person to recognize their ability to have contributed to winning World War I just as much as that doughboy, like my great uncle, did back more than 100 years ago. It's amazing.
Really says something about the man when he considers himself part of something greater than he himself is. And you alluded to that earlier in your comments, Carl, and I think that's very important to remember. Each of these graduates felt like they were part of something that was larger than themselves, and that contributed to their bearing and to their conduct throughout their military careers. They understood that no individual was above the mission, and they set out to accomplish what needed to be accomplished. But the real beauty of this is that these guys were ordinary young men when they started. Their experience at West Point at the U.S. Military Academy shaped them for the events that would later unfold. And one of the things that is interesting to think about, that we talk about back and forth as historians and will debate till the end of time, is whether the times make the man or woman, or the man makes the times. And I think after this kind of study and this kind of research that it's some of both, actually, and that's an interesting blend of personality and events.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that's exactly right. Talk about the times making the man. One of the things that as I was going through here earlier, I bookmarked this because I wanted to talk about it real quick, and it says Eisenhower assumed the role of Supreme Allied Commander in January 1944. Only 2 years earlier, he had been a relatively unknown lieutenant colonel, serving as chief of staff to the Third Army. In a photo with General Kruger and other members of his staff, he was identified as Lieutenant Colonel D.D. Ursenbeing. That just cracks me up. How in the world can a guy go being from being a lieutenant colonel to the Allied Forces commander in 2 years? That's mind-boggling.
It's really an interesting journey, and a short one from being an unknown to being cast in a leading role. And I think the primary reason for that is twofold. I think that Eisenhower demonstrated some characteristics in his lifetime and in his career that were very necessary at the time of World War II. Coalition warfare was something that required a real military diplomat to actually pull off, to maintain that coalition and that alliance against Nazi Germany was no small feat. But something had to occur prior to that gave him the opportunity to do it. Someone had to recognize his ability, his leadership skills, his administrative skills, his organizational skills, and his capacity to distill a complex problem into a solution. And that person was George Marshall. George Marshall was the Army Chief of Staff at the time, And he had a very innate talent for recognizing ability in young officers. He recognized that in Eisenhower. He also recognized it in Omar Bradley and a number of other young up-and-coming officers at the time. And when he brought Eisenhower to the War Department, he gave him a little test. He said, "Tell me what you think we ought to do about the situation in the Pacific." And Eisenhower was an old bridge player. He held his cards close to his vest, and he said, "Give me a pencil and some paper and about an hour or two, and I'll come back with an answer." And he did. And Marshall nodded and agreed with his assessment of the situation in the Pacific. And from that point on, he had gained Marshall's confidence. And one of the things that Marshall said to him was, "I think you're going to work out well here, because basically what I need is someone who will come to me with solutions and not with a problem and expect me to solve it for them." And Marshall was a hands-off leader and commander and allowed the people that he trusted to do their jobs.
Well, yeah, just an amazing group of people and the way they work together. What you learn as you put the book together? What was the most surprising statistic or fact or maybe story about one of these young West Pointers that maybe not everybody knows?
Well, one of the things that I learned that was quite interesting to me was that several of these guys didn't intend to take the military to heart and become career soldiers. Eisenhower, for one, wanted to go to West Point to play football. That was his primary objective, was to be an outstanding football player, and indeed he was, until a knee injury ended his football career at West Point. And he came from a background that was fairly rough and tumble. He by no means was one of these born with a silver spoon in his mouth. He was not an aristocrat. Some of the guys were scions of old military families, but Eisenhower was not. He worked in a creamery to help his brother get through the University of Michigan after they made an agreement that the winner of a coin toss or some wager that they had would go to college while the other worked in the creamery and sent money up to him to support him. And then Eisenhower found out that he didn't necessarily have to have a pocket full of money to get a college education. He found out that he could go to West Point, apply himself, actually engage in athletics, and the taxpayer would pay his college expenses. Bradley had the same type of experience. His Sunday school teacher told him that he didn't have to work so hard to pay his way to the University of Missouri, which is where he wanted to go, if he would be willing to trade Uncle Sam a few years of his life in exchange for a college education paid for by the American taxpayer. So the two of them, from very difficult circumstances, emerged as the two most prominent members of the class of 1915, which is kind of there's a beauty and a resonance in that when you compare it to some of those that had every advantage.
And I've been to Abilene, Kansas, where Eisenhower came from, and a little two-bit town, and to think that somebody ultimately that became president of the United States, coming from that, working in the creamery, I've been in that creamery too, to see that, I mean, that's inspiring, and it definitely shows that if you apply yourself and you take charge of yourself, there's no telling what lengths you might go to. Of course, it always helps to have a mentor that steps in there and helps you out. But back to what Gallant Few does, did you pick up on any of these West Point graduates that had issues with post-traumatic stress, or did any of them commit suicide at any time?
Carl, there's a touching story that's in the book. It doesn't involve a member of the class of 1915, but it involves his son. The member of the class of 1915 was Jake Meneely, and he was one of those who lived well into his 90s and was one of the last surviving members of the class. These men were in their 50s on the eve of World War II, and they were old enough to have children that were nearly grown. And in Jake Meneely's case, he did have a son who went to medical school and became a physician, and then went into the Army and served in the Italian campaign during World War II, and experienced some very traumatic events on the battlefield as a medic, as a corpsman. And one of those events was the death of his very best friend within days of their arrival in the theater. And the situation that unfolded for him when he came back to the United States from World War II was one that's familiar to all of us when we talk about the tragedy of suicide and the tragedy of post-traumatic stress disorder. And when we look back at this gentleman's life, he became a practicing physician, he married, he had children, and then one evening in 1961, he drove to his office after years of abuse of medications and alcohol and finding no relief there, no support network, no real sounding board, no sympathetic ear that could listen to what he was going through and empathize with him, locked the door to his office behind him and committed suicide. And I put that vignette in the book for a couple of reasons. The number one reason is to allow the reader to draw the conclusion that the issue of post-traumatic stress disorder, the issues that confront our veterans today, are very similar to what we've seen generation after generation during periods of great sacrifice from our veterans. And I wanted to draw attention to that because I think it's important for people to hear the story, but then also to understand and to know that his daughters took something that was a very difficult situation, traumatic situation for them, and made something positive out of it. They took his letters and they wrote a music-oriented oratorio, let's say, or suite that has been performed a number of times that calls attention to their father's tragic journey and also to the importance that we should be placing on the sacrifice our veterans have made and the fact that we owe them a tremendous debt of gratitude. So that's why that's in the book.
I'll have to look that up. Yeah, thank you for including that. Where is the book publicly for sale now? Is it about to be released? What's the status on that?
Actually, it was released in mid-October of 2014. We continue to have high hopes for it, Carl. It is available now on Amazon.com. It's available at Barnes & Noble and where better books are sold. And it's also available at the Zenith Press website, which is easy to find. Google Zenith Press, it'll come up, and you can click on it, and actually you can look at some excerpts from the book. And it's one of those things that I think fills a niche for us. It tells the story of a class that really helped us shape modern America. And there are stories of sacrifice in that book. All the guys that went to war in World War II didn't make it home. All the guys from the class that went to war during World War I didn't make it home. And those who did come back were profoundly affected by their experience. And so I appreciate your having me here to talk about it a little bit and to ask folks to give it a look, and hopefully they'll enjoy it.
I want to show a couple of the pictures that's in there. One of them, I think it might be this picture over here. I was surprised that Eisenhower was about the same height as everybody else. I always thought he towered over everyone. Maybe it was just one of those by reputation or something that you figured he was 8 feet tall.
Well, he and Bradley both were pretty tall guys, and Bradley was an outstanding baseball player. Eisenhower was probably the best halfback in the eastern United States in college football when he was injured. Wow. And you look at those guys, the 1914 team actually went undefeated and won a national championship, and it's been a long, long time since we've been able to say that the Army football team won a national championship. It has happened since 1914, but it's been a long time.
Well, thank you for being on the show today, Michael. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the book. I'm going to finish reading it, and I'll pass the word out there. I'll put the links on the blog, and hopefully we'll get some folks that'll go take a look at it.
Well, Carl, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to take some time and talk about the book, but I want to thank you and your organization for what you do for our veterans, and thank all of our veterans for their service to our country.
All right, Michael. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
There's just a couple things I want to run through before I conclude the show today, and I don't want to go into a whole lot of detail. There's been a couple of veteran issues, folks that I've talked to just over the last, let's say, couple of months, because I don't want to narrow it down too much. But there is, and I think I've talked to Boone Cutler about this. You've heard him talk about the glide slope. And what we're seeing in terms of the glide slope is a veteran that comes home that becomes isolated. And they may become isolated because they just don't know anybody else that's there, or they just don't feel comfortable reaching out and talking to anybody else that's there, or the circumstances of their departure from the military are such that they are actively avoiding other people from that community. Let's say somebody that serves in an elite unit like a Ranger battalion and then gets a DUI, gets a DUI after a combat deployment, and the unit sheds them faster than you change your socks. And when somebody leaves with that kind of a, call it a brick around your neck or a burden that you're carrying, you actively avoid the population of people that have been very, very important to you, that you have bled, sweated, toiled to be a part of, and then in the flash of a bad decision, it's all gone. When they step into that isolation mode, then what I see happening, and I'm going to overgeneralize a little bit because I see it enough to know that it exists almost universally. For some veterans, it's very tiny. For other veterans, it's almost insurmountable, or maybe insurmountable. Isolation, the first thing that happens is their interpersonal relationship starts suffering, and they have difficulty either getting a job or staying in a job. They may go through 3 or 4 different jobs because they're trying to get jobs the old way. They're not using networking and leveraging their military experience and connections. Instead, they're trying to upload a resume, and they're finding out that the best thing they can get is a part-time job working for some small store somewhere in town. So then they get very, very frustrated. So now you have a combination of interpersonal relationships that are a problem, financial situation is a problem. Maybe the VA has taken their dear sweet time at rating you for whether it's post-traumatic stress or whether it's an actual other injury. I've seen a lot of soldiers that leave the military that because they're not visibly tore up, they got all their arms and legs, they got all their eyes, they're not going to go claim something with the VA because they think that it takes something away from those that truly sacrificed pieces of their body if they go and ask for help from the VA, to which I reply, go. Get the help from the VA. It may not be important to you right now, but when you're 70 years old, it might be the difference between you living under a bridge or having a roof over your head. You got to document that stuff and you got to apply for it. You have somebody that moves down this glide slope. It's a gradual. It's not off the shelf kind of thing. It's a gradual glide slope. The interpersonal relationships, the difficulty with employment, the difficulty with financial situations, that you may end up losing a car, you may end up being thrown out of a home or thrown out of an apartment. You start burning relationships as you start staying with family or friends, and you work your way through. As many people will let you stay there for as long as you can until you burn through all of those too. And then at some point in there, the person that's the most important to you, significant other, says, I'm done. You haven't got the help you needed, or I'm tired of the anger, or I'm tired of the drinking, or I'm tired of the whatever, and they say, see you later. That is like the final nail in the coffin, and that's when that veteran is at the greatest risk for committing suicide. Now, there are a whole lot of other permutations to this, and you can branch it off 100 different ways, but isolation is the single most consistently situation that I find these veterans in. And I'm not saying that right, but that is the #1 indicator if a veteran is isolated. And the longer they're isolated, the greater the problems get and the harder they are to overcome. And when veterans come to me for assistance, a lot of times they are at the point of they're being thrown out of wherever they're living, and they are up to their ears in debt, and they don't have anything to their name. And it is really, really hard to stop somebody from being evicted the day before they're being evicted. 90, 120 days, 6 months out, when things are going down that glide slope, we can affect that. We can help make that positive change. So if you're going through that, and let me tell you, there is nothing to be embarrassed or ashamed about going through that. I can tell you that I've lost my job before. I can tell you that I've had to live in the basement of my parents' house with my wife and my kids. And I'll tell you that I worked hard as hell that I could to get out of there too, to get back into an environment where I was taking control of my own life. It happens. Sometimes it happens because you screw up. Sometimes it happens because the economy screws up or force is greater than you or a bear. You can't take it personally. You can't let it embarrass you and shame you into not seeking help. You got to reach out and connect with that community. Would you help a veteran if they came to you, if one of your buddies came to you and said, man, I'm really, really hurt and I need some help working through some of these situations? Would you say, man, go away, you're worthless, I don't want to help you? Or would you say, come here, brother, let's sit down, let's go through your stuff? He or she would do the exact same thing to you. They would say, come here, let's figure out what's going on, let's look for some resources, and let's get you back up on your feet. That's the kind of relationships that we have to foster, we have to maintain, and we have to equip ourselves with the resources that help those veterans work through those problems. When I tell a veteran, the things that you're describing to me, it's not unique. There's a whole lot of veterans that are in the exact same boat as you. I can feel the tension leave their body over the telephone. I can feel it because they have been so on edge. They're so wrapped up and their gut is clenched so tight that they have to tell me that they don't have any money and they're losing their car. And when I tell them, I talk to veterans that happens to a lot, then they're like, oh, wow, so it's not just me. I'm not the only one that's got this issue. No, you're not. And we can figure out a way to get through that, and we can do that together. When we help people like that, I got to tell you, we hold people to standards. I got a message from somebody the other day, hey, on Blind Faith, send somebody some money because they need it. It doesn't work like that. We need to know what's the root cause, why is it happening, how can we affect it, what can we change, because if I give somebody $500 today, then 30 days from now, what's different? Why won't they need that exact same thing then? We can't do that. We don't have enough resources to be able to do as much as I would love to do that. But what we do have the ability to do is sit down, figure out a plan, and then help put that plan into action so that it turns into something that is sustainable and something that will grow. So, when I get on my soapbox, I really get on my soapbox. So I appreciate everybody listening to me while I got on my soapbox. Couple of things I'm going to do to close out here, and I'm having problems with the Google Hangout today. When you work with a program that's free, you can't really complain about whether or not it works exactly perfectly right, but I wasn't able to put up, I'm going to try and put my end slide here, which says, here's our website and stuff, and I've clicked it. It should show. From what I'm seeing on my end, it's not showing. So I apologize that stuff isn't working. Gallant Few's website is gallantfew.org. That's GALLANTFEW, or Golf Alpha Lima Lima Alpha November Tango Foxtrot Echo Whiskey for those of you that still spell like that. gallantfew.org. And again, my contact information is in the top right corner, my phone number, my mobile phone number, my email address. On Facebook, gallantfew.org. You also look for the Raider Project coming soon. 1st of March, look for the Darby Project. That's really, really exciting, and I've got some great news that I'm going to be very eager to share with you here just in a couple of weeks. I do want to run through, let me show this Run Ranger Run piece here real quick.
Vets On Media and Gallant Few announce Run Ranger Run, a nationwide event to raise awareness of veteran issues. Teams of up to 10 individuals pledge to walk, run, or bike a combined total of 565 miles in the month of February, raising awareness for veteran transition issues and funds for Gallant Few. Visit our website, runrangerrun.com, to learn how to join the movement. So why not help some vets, have some fun, and start getting in shape for spring? Teams are forming all over the country. Are you ready to form yours? To learn more, visit runrangerrun.com.
Run Ranger Run is pretty simple. A Ranger, Corey Smith, was about to get out of the Army, and so he decided he was going to run from Fort Benning, Georgia, all the way home to Indianapolis, approximately 565 miles, and he was going to do it in 28 days.
Well, Corey, why are you going to run home? And he said, because I want to illustrate the difficult journey that a soldier has becoming a veteran.
We realize not everybody is the athlete that Corey Smith was when he did the 565 miles, but we realize you can do it as a team and make it an event.
Corey did 565 miles all by himself, and he ran, and he walked, and he biked. So we want 10 people to do 565 miles combined total, running, walking, biking, anything that you can do that you can count distance on. You could have a grandmother walking on a treadmill in the YMCA. You could have a soldier walking patrol in Afghanistan. You could have a kid walking or riding a bike to school. and all of those miles can contribute to that one team total. Run Ranger Run is the most important single event that Gallant Few does. It has a mission of awareness. Gallant Few's mission is to overcome the isolation that veterans may face as they leave active duty.
Gallant Few understands that when veterans transition off active duty, that it is an overnight change. Our goal was to set up mentors to welcome that veteran home, both professionally and socially. And we found that if we take veterans who've already been through that process, successfully transitioned, and mentored them up with these new veterans coming off, that it's a perfect match.
If I can have 100,000 veterans across the country that are just standing by waiting to mentor a veteran as he or she leaves active duty, then when that veteran returns to that hometown, they're going to be welcomed, accepted, integrated. They're going to find jobs. They're going to have doors open. The network will be there. And a lot of the issues that we see veterans go through as they transition are going to go away.
People can get involved with Run Ranger Run by visiting gallantfew.org and going under events and looking for Run Ranger Run, and all the information on how to get signed up, how to raise awareness, to build teams, or become part of a team is all right there at your fingertips.
It's a cool event, it's a fun event, and it's an easy one to participate in. I want to say thank you to the Care Coalition Team Room folks for putting that video together for us. We're closing in on the number from last year. We're about $120,000 raised so far, counting registrations and donations. We want to get to 175, and we need that support because of the expansion plans that we have this year. A couple of cool things that are still running as a result of this. Spencer Allen Ryder, SAR Global Tool, is doing a custom knife build. He calls it the Inglorious Bastard, and he's done this he did one last year, and he's been documenting the build on a blog online. It's a really cool process to see how that works. Somebody is going to win that, and that somebody, if you donate at least $25, you get entered into a drawing to win that guy. $25 for a knife that would probably sell for $500 or $600, maybe more. That's a pretty cool deal, so go take a look at that. There are a couple other things. Like we've got folks that have raised over $250. They get a special I Have Helped Save Lives shirt that was designed and produced for us by Ranger Up. The community really comes together to help make this happen. And the tagline, "Your mile saved lives," is absolutely true. And speaking of which, it's about time for me to go get a mile. Run Ranger Run 2015. I need to go get a couple of miles on myself. Thank you for being here today. Thanks for joining Gallant Few's The New American Veteran. Just about every Tuesday we do this live. You can catch all of the archived broadcasts by going to vetsonmedia.com/tnav, and that will direct you right to our YouTube page. You can also search if you use iTunes. You can search Gallant Few in the podcasts, and you can subscribe to the audio of our podcasts. And now I'll let my daughter take us out.
Thanks for tuning in to my dad's radio show. You are listening to Gallant Few's The New American Veteran on the Vets on Media Network.
Thank you for listening to Gallant Few's The New American Veteran. Special thanks to Michael Broderick, Kenny Thomas, Tim Abel, Jim O'Farrell, and Madison Rising for permission to use their audio recordings on this broadcast. That rendition of Taps is a public domain recording created by a soldier or employee of the United States government and as such is not subject to copyright protection. This has been a production of Gallant Fuse, the New American Veteran, a proud member of the Vets on Media Global Network, all rights reserved. Learn more at www.gallantfew.org.